Juan hates British interviewers, so let's not be British.
No, we're not British.
No, totally New Jersey, right? How was the tour?
Good.
Yeah?
Yeah. It turned out really well.
Compared to the little round in America?
What do you mean?
Like better, worse?
Well, we were the opening act from Metallica in England, so I don't know if you know what it's like in England. It's like usually like 5 or 10 people will be in there for the opening act or whatever.
Really?
And we had the house about 2/3 full to full most of the time, which is just amazing to begin with. The people just couldn't believe it. And so, yeah, it went over really well. A couple of times we could have did encores, you know, they call for an encore. We just didn't do it, though, because Metallica had a set that, you know, was timed certain, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they had to have a half hour to set up this big stage set. They had, like, the big statue and everything. So
Yeah.
it was pretty cool.
Were people over there aware of the band?
Yeah.
I mean, this was the first, wasn't this like the first time you've been there since the band tour?
Yeah. Yeah, people were more aware. A lot of people didn't know the stuff off the new record. Only the people that could afford the import. Which there was a few of them because it was like #1 over there as import.
It was?
Yeah.
All right.
Good.
Already. Jeez. The album or the single?
The album.
The album?
The album.
Holy shit, that's great.
But that's like real expensive. I think it was equivalent to like $20 or $25 American for the import. Yeah, our record company over there is a real I told Rick that already. Yeah,
so now what? There's going to be a tour here?
Yeah.
And that's what, a headliner thing?
Yeah, like clubs and stuff like that, and halls and whatever, you know, they book us into.
Yeah. How extensive? Just East Coast or everywhere?
No, everywhere.
Oh. Do you prefer that? Do you prefer to do like a headliner in clubs as opposed to an open? You probably do.
It's, you know who the people are there for.
Yeah.
You know, it's like when we do a show with Metallica or Slayer, we have our audience there, but, you know, usually the main people are there to see, you know, the headliner. Because sometimes, well, it hasn't happened to us that much. We usually get advertised when we play with somebody like Slayer because it's an added draw, you know. It helps sell tickets.
Did you have a problem with any of the, like, you know, the more, like, stupider fans of the Slayer show were kind of, like, not into it or whatever?
No, the only place we had a problem was in Chicago. We didn't have a sound crew with us. Slayer was supposed to let us use their crew. We, you know, had agreed to that beforehand. We did like 4 shows with them. And they didn't give us any in LA, and that wasn't a problem. But then in Chicago, John took off his one guitar and grabbed his other one, and it was out of tune. And that was just screwed. And then Chuck's drum broke in another song, and there was nobody there to fix it. And he didn't even have the equipment handy that he could do it himself. And it just cut into time, and, you know, then Slayer goes, you can't give them, like, any time to, like, think at all, because they can't think. All they think is, oh, Slayer, Slayer, you know. Yeah, so that was the only time. The other times, we had encores, and Slayer were like, I can't believe this. I've never heard anyone yell anything but Slayer at our shows.
Yeah.
They're like,
Oh, that's cool.
amazed.
That's good, because we had, I think you talked to him about that on the phone, we had gone to the show at the Felt Forum, and it was just so obnoxious, the Slayer people.
Because there were so many of your fans there, and they felt kind of like, you know, we want to see the show too, so shut up, you Slayer, Slayer.
Yeah. Yeah, well, what can you do?
Yeah.
I can't, you know.
Yeah. Now, when you do the round that you're going to do, are you going to have an opening act?
We're not going to bring anybody with us. I want, like, they wanted to throw, like, Circus of Power on the tour with us, and I was just like, I never heard of them, and I don't care about them. I'd rather have, like, a local strong act come in and let them play in front of a lot of people. That's what we've always done. With Sam Hain, we used to take any band we liked, who we had played with before, like, on a bill, we would take them for, like, 4 or 5 gigs and let them, you know, come on tour with us. We thought that people should see them, you know.
Yeah. Circus Power is a good act. You probably like.
Yeah.
They're okay.
Kind of similar.
Yeah.
I've never. Erie played me the tape in the van because Rick Sales put it down and I didn't like it. It was like, I don't know.
It's okay.
Yeah. It's more biker rock kind of stuff.
I guess the basic question would be like, I'm curious about like how the change from Sam Hain to Danzig came about, like, how you shifted projects.
Uh, well, basically, we came down. That's the story there. Should I repeat that?
I guess so.
All right.
Go ahead for the record.
So Rick came down to the New Music Seminar, which we were doing for Chris Williamson. He saw the band and wanted to sign us. And at that time, we were talking to a bunch of labels. We decided to go with Def Jam because we really liked the way Rick, approached our band. He knew a lot of stuff about the band the other labels didn't, and it was really good commitment there. And we just decided to do that. And eventually, we knew we needed a new guitar player, and I wanted to get rid of the drummer. And we tried to make do with the drummer, and it just couldn't happen. So we got Biscuits, and then decided to do a name change because it wasn't, Sam Hain anymore. But we wanted to keep the skull and some of the other stuff because it still had a relevance to what we were doing.
What do you think is the biggest difference between the two bands? I mean,
Between Sam Hain and
like direction-wise or whatever, I guess.
and Danzig, I don't know. It's not. I wouldn't say there's that much difference. I think the songs are more. Let me see. I don't want to say less experimental because we're experimenting with a lot of different stuff. It's just different, you know what I mean? But I'd say that there's a bigger difference between, like, say, the Misfits and Danzig. Then you can see a real big difference. Like Sam Hain is kind of like, you can see, like, some of the stuff is more, in the new record is more roots kind of oriented. And there's some of that in Sam Hain, but if you go all the way back to the Misfits, it's like just, fast, crazy. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's more of it's still brutal and dark, but it's kind of an up-tempo kind of feel to it, with the melodies and all that stuff. And if you take the Misfits and Danzig, it's just like, night and day.
Yeah. I guess that kind of answers one of the questions I was thinking, which is, if the Misfits, you ever felt the Misfits became like an albatross, that like people would never let you, like...
No.
No, obviously it hasn't, because if you say that Danzig is getting the response that it's getting it because...
Well, even with Sam Hain, when we went out with Sam Hain, me and Erie had decided, we wanted to do something different, something with more of a commitment to playing instruments and writing better songs and that kind of stuff. And we had like doubled and tripled our audience in some markets, whereas it took years for the Misfits to even reach a level where we could even go out on the road and tour. Of course, the climate was different too. A lot of people were more aware of what was going on. But I mean, Sam Hain in half a year did what it took the Misfits about 7-8 years to do, which was pretty wild. And then with the release of the last Sam Hain record, it was just all of a sudden record companies wanted, knew about us and wanted a piece of the action or whatever. So that was kind of gratifying.
Yeah.
Because me and Erie had set like this limit. We said 2 years we'll, have record companies trying to get us, a big deal. And if not, we're still on Plan 9 and we'll be selling lots of records.
I was really curious about that. If in all the times of all your projects, if record companies ever were seeking you out, just because there always was that like underground buzz about you, and a lot of times, you're smart A&R guys tune into that.
CBS once wanted to sign us both here and in at various times, but they also wanted to change the music around. And I was just like, no.
Yeah.
Sorry. So that was it.
Did you ever, in the interim also, I always wondered too, if you ever were approached by other bands to like, join somebody else's project?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The guys from Minor Threat, once their band collapsed, wanted me to sing for them. I went down and tried to work it out, and it just wasn't working.
So you did consider it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was the thing that became the meat, right? Like
Eventually, well, they were doing that also.
Right.
It was just kind of like they had all these things going, and they wanted to do their own band and not do the meat and any of this other stuff. And they just, too many ideas. It was like Brian Baker and Lyle. And I don't know. it was just a real tension between those two guys, and I was just like, the songs were like 5 different parts that were just totally different from each other. So it wasn't a real song. It was just like 5 ideas, and they weren't being objective about it. They were like, I wrote it, it's good. You know what I mean? And that's not the case. You can write shit, you know what I mean? And they were just not being objective about the stuff they wrote. So,
Do you see this project also as more of a showcase for your voice than previous ones? Because it seems like with this, your voice has more of a prominence. Like I always felt like, especially live, like if you look at listen to old Misfits live tapes or whatever, you know, sometimes your voice got drowned out or whatever.
yeah.
This
Well, that was
seems
a problem that we were getting in the Misfits. A lot of people were coming back and saying, it just sounds like noise and you can't hear the vocals. I don't know what song you're doing. And stuff like that. And the guys in the band didn't care, really. I mean, they weren't tuning their guitars before they went on stage. They didn't really care about any of that stuff. And that's one of the reasons that the band, just eventually. Yeah, the new band, what Rick wanted to do is that people should be hearing what you're saying. And I agreed, you should hear, the vocals. And Erie was always saying that you should hear the vocals more.
You do.
definitely, I mean,
Yeah.
that's the thing with the new record that I think really strikes people the most.
And that's the most, well, to me, that's the most appealing.
Yeah,
too.
of course. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what you really tune into.
Yeah.
A lot of people are tuning into the whole band. The buzz that I'm getting is that, like, for once we have like a real guitar player in the band, and a drummer too, a great drummer.
Yeah.
It's like a real band. So I think that helped us also on the Metallica and Slayer dates. It's like a real band. You can't deny it. You may not know the songs, or you're not familiar with it, whatever, but it's like a real band up there playing. Like, it doesn't rely on like death, murder, destruction, and mosh, and go fast in a million miles an hour. Just so people will relate to that.
Yeah. Well, also, I mean, when you played the Felt Form, I thought that if you had just started playing out and stuff, you didn't get that impression. I mean, it really did feel like you guys played together very solidly. It didn't seem like you were, trying to find your way. I mean, you seemed real in control. Together.
Because it's a good band.
Yeah. Well, the first single was Mother, and did you? Right?
I don't have a copy of it, so I don't know.
The first single, Glenn, is Mother. That's because it's getting a lot of airplay, at least on like the college stations and stuff like that. Is there any signs of it in this world? Is it getting onto normal radio, commercial?
Yeah, it is.
Radio,
It's on like
whatever?
30-something stations.
Is it?
Yeah, like stations like NEW kind of
It is?
stations
Yeah?
across the country.
But not NEW.
I think NEW plays it. This is
Like
what I've been
2 in the
told.
morning or something.
I don't know. Well, in between the Grateful Dead and Bruce
Right.
Springsteen, somewhere in there. Yeah.
Yeah, really.
I'm not positive.
Does that kind of stuff like concern you? I mean, does it matter to you?
No, I'd rather let them hear us than fucking Foreigner or Bruce Springsteen. I don't care. Any station that wants to play our stuff, fine with me. I don't care. Music is made for people to hear it, not to be buried somewhere. That's the thing I never liked about the punk thing, and especially like Maximum Rock and Roll and all those magazines. It was just like, this is punk and it's just for us.
Yeah.
Well, who's us? It's everybody. It's not, just for these people. They don't like when bands break out of the club circuit, but then they also go, oh, this band broke up too soon, before their time. Yeah, because they had no money, they couldn't get out of the club market, and all of a sudden everyone's, you're old hat, and we're not going to pay you anymore, and all this other stuff. And they don't understand. They should be happy if their band breaks out, because then that just makes it easier for other bands to break out, and then eventually radio or whatever will change, At least, even if it changes like 10 or 20%, it's still better than not having it change that much at all.
Do you think that that's kind of what's helping the momentum for you this time around, is that radio has become so much more receptive to music with a harder edge, or whatever you want to call it, like with the Guns N' Roses thing happening so big, that's opened a lot of doors?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't think we sound like
No, not that you sound like them at all, but I just mean.
You mean that they're
like,
being more receptive? They think there's
There's
dollars
more
to be made, so they're going to play this or try and sign this or that.
Yeah, it's like all of a sudden everybody
could be,
that before wasn't on the bandwagon. I mean, also all of a sudden MTV, which before was banning harder rock left, right, and sideways. The only they could play was Whitney Houston and George Michael. Now it's like heavy metal and hard rock is.
Well, they banned our video.
Well, from what I understand, yeah.
What?
Did you had to do an edited version? Right?
Well, we did 3 versions that we handed to them, and they didn't accept any of them. Well, the program directors liked them, but the board of censors just said no.
Specifically, what was the objection? The last thing? If you cut that out? Or?
No, everything. I mean, this girl had a cross earring on. They wanted that out. There's a
Madonna wears cross earrings.
There's a tombstone shadow in the back of this, like, there's 5 girls standing there, and there's just a shadow of a tombstone, like it's got a cross with a circle through it, those kind of things.
Yeah.
That had to be blacked out.
I don't
never heard of something like this.
So what did
The little insignia that I used to have on my shirt, which is like an upside down cross with the skull in it, they didn't want that in there at all. They were freaking.
They show Motley Crue
They
videos
show,
with
yeah,
them, like,
all
doing,
this kind of
devil signs
stuff.
and stuff, and they won't show your video.
Oh my! I could see the sacrifice thing, whatever you want to call it. That okay, I understand it. But I can't believe they look that closely and pick these. Wow.
It's ridiculous.
So
You haven't seen the video?
Yeah, I saw it. I think it was really good. But I don't know why they. It didn't seem that like.
I think it's pretty tame.
Yeah,
compared to a lot of
outrageous or
stuff,
anything.
yeah. So are you gonna do anything? I mean, are you gonna further edit?
I didn't want to edit it to begin with. I didn't want to put the X's across. I mean, they sent them a copy with black X's across the stuff and all the stuff, blacked out, and they just rejected it. They said they can see too much still. And some.
Is there any room? I'm just so curious how they do these things. Is there any room for argument? Like if something
No,
like this?
they just say, well, we just won't play it.
And there's no degree of saying, for instance, cross earrings. Madonna wears cross earrings. And
Doesn't matter. They said that if she turned it in today, they wouldn't accept it.
Oh, they changed this thing.
Yeah, because they turned down a Billy Idol video because it had a cross in it.
Yeah.
And they also turned down Motley Crue had a video for a ballad or something.
Yeah, well, that was because it's about he kills his girlfriend out of love.
Well, yeah, but then they'll play something like Poison's Fallen Angel.
Yeah, exactly.
Doesn't make sense.
Wow.
Maybe they want money.
God.
I don't know.
I wonder what I was really curious about. I just read yesterday. What is that thing that's coming out in Caroline? The Misfits, the album.
Oh, that's just a CD. Somebody bootlegged the CD and just took the CD down to a mastering lab and made an album of it. Misfits 20-song CD. So to stop the bootleg, we were just putting that out as an album. We didn't want it, or it's either that or people are going to be paying $30 to $50 for this stupid fucking bootleg album.
Yeah.
So,
does that bother you now that it seems like for so many years there was never any Misfits bootleg material at all on the market, or very little, and then all of a sudden in the last year, you go to any store around here and there's 20 different albums.
Yeah, it bothers me.
I mean,
that really bothers me, but you have to work. You don't have to work through the system, but that's what we're doing right now. But we have a bunch of cases coming up where we have actually cut the people. It's really stupid. One guy pressed records at Nashville, which is a pressing plant down south, and they code everything. And it says, NV, Nashville, and it's got the code, and right on the fucking record it says that. So we just call up and go, can we have the doc number of this and who ordered it and blah, 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 and that's it. And they have a guy at the RIAA his job is to just look at a record and tell you where it's from. He has records from every pressing plant in America. And he just sits there and he looks at the fucking thing and he goes, this is from such and such pressing plant in California. And then you just call up and find out who pressed it, who paid for it, kind of stuff.
Good.
so you are pursuing.
Oh yeah, we already took 2 people down. But we want to take some of the heavy people down. Because they're making a lot of money. Just 1,000 records at wholesale, used to be $30 retail. 1,000 records at wholesale is $15,000. tax-free.
That's a rip-off.
That's what they're making, and then the store makes another 15,000, or the distributor, whoever handles this stuff. None of the distributors will admit that they're handling it, but we know who they are.
Yeah, really. I wanted to touch back again on the thing we were just talking about with the censorship and all this crap, because this is something we've been real affected by the magazine and stuff, because the whole they pull us from the shelves, da 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 da, and all that. And I'm just really curious. I had mentioned to Greg, it's weird that tonight is that Geraldo Rivera special, and Devil
It'll be
Worship
like
and
a
all
real
this.
sensationalist, stupid ratings getting thing.
Oh, yeah.
None of the information will be accurate whatsoever.
Although he's supposedly, right, King Diamond is on the show. It'll be interesting to see like what his
He's a
what
joke.
his side effect.
It's a joke. Go look. Okay, what I just said. They got some stupid goof who just puts on stupid makeup and pretends he's like, and so here we go.
Well, see, that was what I wanted to ask you, like, because it can get serious. I mean, repercussions from something like this, it worries me a little bit, because every time this stuff gets stirred up again, we get pulled off the shelves. And I'm just, like, really curious, because we talk about this all the time. What if you were, like, debating Tipper Gore or any of these idiots or stuff, like, how would you defend?
I said, fuck with me and I'll fuck with you. I would say, if you try to take my freedom away, I will take a gun and blow your head off. Because I believe it's worth fighting for. And if you don't believe it's worth fighting for, shut your mouth and get the hell off this, podium and shut up.
Okay.
You don't want to use guns? Get in a ring with me. Tear your head off.
Oh, God.
Well, that's what it comes down to. I mean, basically, it's like he's trying to take your rights away.
Yeah.
I mean, now they have that law. I was reading in Spin that they're going to pass this
child
pornography, but it kind of opens the door for this other thing, recorded music, which is considered obscene for children.
And the decision is left up to local authorities as to what's obscene.
Local authorities, man. You go down south.
They can look around and say, oh, this has a skull on it. It's got to be devil music,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just, it's just that, we've heard so many people's, like, Ozzy always gets accused, this kid killed himself because he was that kind of stuff. Like, Greg always says as a defense kind of thing, and a lot of people do, he sees a lot of it as, like, larger-than-life cartoon kind of entertainment, with superheroes and monsters or whatever you want to call them, that kind of thing. I'm just curious, do you have a specific way that you, like, your defense of a lot of this kind of stuff that's devil-related or death-related or anything?
I think that it's like, it's ridiculous to even be having to discuss this, right?
Yeah.
Okay, but it's like if they don't want their kids listening to their stuff, they should take a more active role in raising their children and saying, I don't want you listening to this stuff. And if the kid says, well, I want to listen to it, then they're infringing not only on your rights to produce that music, but also on the kid's right to listen to it or not. And I mean, if this kid kills himself, he doesn't kill himself just because he's listening to that record. He has other problems besides that. I mean, that's obvious. Any psychiatrist will tell you that. But they're not going to bring a psychiatrist in unless it's some guy who says, rock music is making children, go crazy. Which they've been saying for years.
Them too,
Well, that's what I mean. They only get people that are going to further their cause, which is just some stupid political thing to get votes anyway. So.
We're talking about the lyrics and kind of thing. I was just curious, like the thing that I like the most on the lyrics on this album. There's like I've noticed it in your work in the past too, but it seems like on this album there's like at least a couple of songs like Twisted King and Am I Demon and Possession and Not of This Earth. So where there's like you have this kind of persona of like someone who's in the world, but they're like alien to it, and they're like somehow greater than human. I don't know. It's like it's got this kind of like persona you're singing from. I've noticed you've done it a lot. Is that something you interests you to be like looking out at the world and being different, but like somehow being stronger than that?
I am.
I knew he was going to say that.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Also, songwriting is a lot of storytelling, but also like your world isn't my world. I don't know your world really, but it's not my world. This world isn't my idea of a world. So I just live in my own world. And I come into your world once in a while. You know, and I bring my own reality with me. Like, your reality is not my reality. I don't want that reality. Whatever this whole world out here is, I just don't like it, so it just doesn't become my world anymore. I create my own world for myself that I'm happy with.
Do people ever give you problems because of that?
I don't give two fucks.
That's the right attitude.
Yeah, well, fuck. I don't really care about other people that much, you know, as far as like whether they approve of what I do or what I don't do. It doesn't bother me.
So is your, like, does how your records do, or like how what people think of something you do really, like, is you doing it for yourself then?
First you have to do it for yourself, and then also for like your audience or whatever, you know. I only have a responsibility to my audience to put out a good record and to do a good live show. That's it. Everything else, you know, is ridiculous.
How do you perceive your audience? Who do you consider your audience?
I don't know.
You don't
They're
know.
just whoever's there. We have a big, you know, a wide spectrum. It's like from little kids to, you know, like older people. It's ridiculous. I have this fucking guy the other day. I was buying comic books, and he came in with his nephew. And this guy was about 50. He says, all I buy is Glenn Danzig records and Iggy Pop old records. And he ran down to this music store and bought like $150 worth of records for me to sign. He ran back into the store and he made me sign all these records.
Wow.
And he had his nephew with him too.
His nephew know you?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So it was like,
Cool.
here's this guy, he's about 50 years old, and his nephew is about like 20 or 22, whatever. It's pretty wild.
Yeah.
How do you, like, I don't know if this is like something you like to talk about or anything, but I just, I talked to you a couple of years ago, and this was like before all this happened. I'm just curious, that was like the one thing I wanted to know, like, how do you feel about like the whole thing that's been overplayed about how Metallica has championed you, and you know, lots of kids who never knew the Misfits or Sam Hain or now Danzig, you know, see them wearing the shirts and covering your songs, and like, how does that make you feel? You know, does it make you feel anything at all?
You know, I don't really care.
You don't care?
I mean, it's great. You know, those guys are great guys. You know, I'm friends with them. And they've always wanted to do the, you know, those covers. And fuck, you know. And like I said before, I'd rather have somebody who's really into it cover them than just somebody who's trying to get over or something. You know, and the Misfits are like, you know, oh, let's do a Misfit cover. You know.
Do you like the way they did it?
Yeah.
Cover? Yeah.
Okay. 2 nights in England, I got up and sang that with them. Which was kind of wild.
People went crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you ever thought about writing something specifically for them to do?
No.
No. Like how you did with Dave Vanian and Roy Orbison?
No, the Roy Orbison thing and also the Dave Vanian thing were just stuff I wrote specifically for them. You know, eventually Dave didn't do that song. He went back with the Damned, and I just, you know, said, fuck, let's do good a song.
How did the Roy Orbison thing, how did that whole thing come about?
Rick and I were always listening to Roy Orbison because I had always liked him. You know, he was like, yeah, Roy Orbison. So I had told him, God, that guy's definitely, with the right producer, he's got like another good record in him somewhere. And eventually he got offered this Lesson Zero soundtrack, and he called me up one day and was like, I'm thinking of using Roy Orbison for this Lesson Zero soundtrack I'm doing for this movie. He goes, do you want to write a song for him? I was like, all right, yeah. And I wrote it in like 2 days, and it was basically like, you know, a song tailored for Roy Orbison. And we did a demo, and we sent it out to him, and he loved it.
Did you have to call it Less Than Zero?
Yeah. Oh, no, that's the other song.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Right.
the Roy Orbison song called Life Fades Away.
Yeah.
Well, Leia told me what it's got to be about. So, like, with the lyrics, you know, at least Rick told me what it's supposed to be about, you know. And then I just said, yeah, okay, no problem.
Yeah. Did you care about it being part of a movie? Like, that's such a trendy thing. Like,
No, I don't care.
No.
You know, because the album stands on its own, you
Yeah.
know, when you buy an album.
Yeah.
They don't really play much of the songs in the
No.
movie.
Yeah. Did you see the movie?
No.
Good.
I
I
didn't
hate that
either.
movie. Ugh, stupid movie. Okay.
Was being a songwriter something that means a lot to you? Or, does your song, your songs just come out, or do you really take a lot of time on them?
I do. For every song that makes it to a record, there's probably about 5 to 10 that get thrown out. At least with me. That's why I don't like a lot of other bands. I hate a lot of other bands because they just write a song and they say, "This is great," and they don't screen their own stuff. They think just because they wrote it, it's great. They should write it, put it aside, and then in a couple days play it again and see if they like it. And if they don't like it that much anymore, then there's something wrong with it. But if it's still really intense and playing and stuff, yeah, then it's great. It's good having a producer. That's why I want to have a producer. And that's why, we went with Rick. We didn't have to use Rick. We could still be on Def Jam and not use Rick. But his ideas and my ideas, a lot of them mixed really well together. So
Did he help a lot with
Was
the
it kind of like
Yeah.
a sounding board, like you were just saying? You write stuff, and sometimes you don't. A lot of people think it's a great song. How do you determine? Do you have?
Well, I do the whole thing, the screening thing, and just bring down the good stuff that I still like after all that stuff. And then we'd bring it down to a production rehearsal, and Rick would come down once in a while, and I'd sit back and listen, and maybe I'd get an idea, or he'd get an idea, what about trying this there? And if I really hated it, I said, "No, you're crazy."
Mm-hmm.
Or if I thought it would go, I said, "Yeah, let's try it, see what happens." And if it works, it works, and if it doesn't, it doesn't.
Mm-hmm. How much input do the other guys in the band
None.
have? I knew he was going to say that
Good
too.
on him.
I mean, on their own arrangements and stuff, or
No.
no?
As far as drum parts, Chuck will improvise a cut here or there, but a lot of it was me or Rick telling him here or there, this needs this or that. He would either come up with something really good, and if within a certain amount of time he didn't, we would tell him, the drum part to play. And the same thing with John with his leads. I mean, some of the leads he pulled out of the hat, but other ones we sat there and said, "Why don't you, do this, or you hum the lead to him and stuff."
Mm-hmm.
You write all your stuff on guitar, right?
And piano.
Do you ever consider doing? You're gonna laugh,
What?
but do you ever consider doing something acoustic?
No.
No.
We did, me and John did an acoustic song in the studio, which Rick has, and he says it's great. I don't know, but it's like an old blues, Seventh Son kind of song. And the lyrics are kind of shit, now they turn it over.
Mine's still going.
Is yours still going?
Sure is.
I guess like a minute.
All right, yeah, it's a typical old blues lyrics, like the woman witch telling the young boy he's special, he's got the power or whatever, that kind of, the juju stuff. But it's a typical blues kind of, Muddy Waters kind of, that kind of thing, Robert Johnson kind of song. It's pretty wild.
Why won't you let him do anything with it?
I didn't say I wouldn't.
Oh, okay.
We did two different versions. We did one where it's kind of like that, and then we did another one where it's just kind of almost like Fever, but it's like nightclub music, and it's still got the guitar stuff like Robert Johnson kind of stuff. And that's all it is. It's just guitar and vocals, and the one is bass guitar and vocals. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
I like it,
Mm-hmm.
but I haven't heard it in a long time.
Yeah. But you would never do it live. You'd never do
We
something.
might.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it'd be cool.
I haven't, heard it in a while though. I don't know what Rick's doing with any of that stuff. We have 2 other songs that aren't on the album.
It reminds me, I was wondering how much of the stuff had changed, before you actually recorded the album, because I had heard some stuff a year before, I heard a version of Am I Demon with totally different lyrics.
No, the lyrics were always the same.
They were?
Yeah.
You didn't say Am I Demon? Yeah. Or it sounded.
Yeah, I did.
Oh, I'll have to listen to it again. There was a couple of songs that were
Could have been a rehearsal tape where I didn't have words yet, where we had just done the song.
Yeah. And there was a song that started up When Death Had No Name.
Yeah, that's one of the songs that didn't make it. That Elvis's Trouble.
Yeah.
Oh,
no.
That was great.
Yeah, that one hasn't made it.
Do you ever want to collaborate with anybody, or do you prefer not?
Not really.
No. I mean, there there isn't like somebody you have a burning desire to like write a song with or anything like that?
No.
Like, no. Okay. Well,
No.
some people do.
Nobody living.
No. I thought maybe, I don't know, Roy Orbison or somebody.
No.
Do you have a preference between like performing and writing and touring? And,
What do you mean?
like, does anyone appeal to you more? Like, do you prefer working in the studio as opposed to performing live, or do you prefer?
I like it all.
You like it all. Yeah.
I like it all. I mean, there's obviously times you don't want to be in the studio when you're doing an album. You're like there almost every day. You're just like, oh, I'm not going to go to the studio again. And it's the same thing with live. You do some great shows, and just the grind starts getting to you, and you just like, I don't want to get up, and go play. And sometimes before you got to play, you got to do interviews, or you got to go to a college radio station.
Yeah.
You don't want to do it, you want to sleep.
Yeah. I can relate to that. In light of the MTV situation, are you doing any promo in MTV? I mean, are they having you do any little walk-ons or
No.
None of that?
I don't want to.
You don't want to?
No, they don't play our radio.
Yeah.
You dicks.
Yeah. I wonder if they'll change that.
Yeah.
I think what happens is because they're now being watched by so many people, it's a lot different than it used to be. And so they're under closer scrutiny from groups like the PNYC or all these people and Christian groups and all the big phonies.
Yeah, right. Really. There was some weird question that we both are like dying to know about.
Oh, yeah.
God. Are you aware of this whole Doyle thing?
Yeah. Picking the bones.
Yeah.
That's what it is. Basically, they, who needs to even talk about it? It's silly. I mean, basically, it's like since whatever I've been doing has been getting some notoriety, and I've been pushing the old Misfit records and the Samhain records, and now the new stuff, they're just thinking that now they're going to scam on something, you know what I mean? I mean, they never really had any input in the band, as far as any input at all. Samhain members and now Danzig members have much more input than these guys ever had. I mean, I just come down to rehearsal and go, this is the song, play it, and it wasn't any real versatile stuff. It was just like, Doyle was not a really good guitar player. I mean, I did play guitar on a lot of those records, especially the Walk Among Us record, and everything prior also.
Have you seen like the big ads? The extent they've gone to
Color
with big
ads,
full color.
They're very
ads?
rich,
They even say like buy the new Misfits
Misfits,
album.
yeah.
So, and it's like,
Well, because that's their only claim to fame. It's been 6 or 7 years since the Misfits are gone. And
we also got the team mailing list with the New Club, because when I first last year I got a postcard advertising it, and it was the only reason they had my address was because I was at the Team Club.
well, it was the old Team Club addresses.
Yeah.
There was a first wave of them, and they put them on their dad's computer file. And then after that, they didn't get any more. After I had left, and still had this mailing list because Sam Hain did extensive mailing lists. So basically, they have about, I'd say, probably 2,000 or 3,000 names, and of those names, probably only about 1,000 are any good, if that. Because a lot of people have gone on to get married or whatever. You know what I mean? We're talking about the list they have is from like 81, 82.
I mean, are you thinking of doing anything to stop them from?
Well, I don't really care. I don't care about the Misfit name that much. I would hate to see them drag it through the mud, So in that aspect, we have done something. But
how would you feel if they I had heard rumors that they were trying to get somebody to put tour them so they could tour as the Misfits and rehash the old stuff in my head. I mean, how would you feel if they did that?
Well, like I just said, I hate to see them drag the names in the mud. But also, I mean, I think a lot of people realize that I wrote all the songs, and I don't know. They would just ruin the songs. I mean, that was one of the reasons the band stopped to begin with. I mean, I just couldn't stand going and doing the live thing. It wasn't even like, somebody explained it really well to me. They said the last year of the Misfits, it was like watching an industrial band do the Misfit songs. Because it was just like amps super loud. You couldn't tell what was what. and just like kind of like a vocal somewhere in there, you know.
Guitar sounds just like.
Yeah. Yes. There you go.
Do you write anything besides songs? Like,
Yeah, I do a lot of soundtrack stuff at home,
Yeah.
like horror soundtrack kind of stuff. I listen to a lot of Wagner. I like Wagner a lot.
Do you write anything along the lines of, you know, books or films?
That stuff, I have a lot of rough drafts for some books and a lot of other stuff like that and some screenplays and stuff.
Mhm.
But right now, I really don't have the time to devote totally to that. I would have to take off like 3 months of just doing nothing but that, like not answering the phone or anything.
Yeah.
Just kind of like really getting into it because I want it to be really good.
Yeah. Do you think you ever would
Yeah.
pursue it? Yeah. Well, that's cool. Because that's what I was also going to ask you. Like, I mean, I guess there comes a day for everybody. Like, if you ever moved on from this, what would you foresee yourself doing? Stuff like that.
Yeah,
like writing
direct.
music?
I'd like to direct
Mhm.
movies, maybe write screenplays, soundtracks. Do some horror movie
Mhm.
soundtracks, and that's it. I don't think I'll ever move away from this. Like totally, will always be this and then that, and
Yeah.
that kind of stuff.
Yeah. That's cool. Have you ever been asked? You probably will be to do something in a movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. Want to tell us?
No. No.
Okay.
It was stupid stuff. It was just
Yeah.
typical, stuff I just wasn't really interested in.
Yeah.
Unless it's like exactly what I want to do.
Do you have a goal? Like you were saying before, how like you and Yuri were examining, like you said, well, we want this by this time, whatever. For this band, seeing that this is like your avenues are much more open with this band. With this band here, like, do you have any kind of long-term plan for it?
Yeah, we want to just be really successful at what we do and put out like great albums that'll just like live forever. That, like I said, 10 or 20 years from now, some kid will walk in and go, yeah, Of course, the band is probably gone or whatever has happened to them, but that kind of deal.
Yeah.
What was in the press release that came with the promo CD? They said something like, they listed your previous bands and it said something like Talus.
I have no idea.
I was like,
that was probably Geffen.
I was like, what the hell is Talus?
What happened was I had made the mistake of telling somebody the first band I was ever in when I was a little kid was a band that was half original and half Black Sabbath covers. And it was a band called Talus because there's a band now. And they made a big deal out of it. I don't know. There's two different press things. Do you have both the press things? Okay, yeah. It's just like ridiculous.
Okay.
And it was like, I heard about it. They said that the Misfits broke up in 1986 or 81 or something silly, I was just like, or whatever, I don't know. Or the Misfits formed in 81 or something silly. It was just like some hack.
You can find that all the time, though.
Yeah.
Press release.
No, the one that Rick and his, and Rick Manello, that one's great. I didn't really write it. I sat there laughing, and then they go, what about this? And I go, funny. It was just like Rick Rubin, I don't know if you know Rick, and Manello, and just like the two most crazy guys, and they're sitting there going, oh, this will be great. And then they just like came up with all this stuff. Great. Geffen hated it. It's like, we would never send out a bio like this. And they're going, good. They wanted like, Glenn in his part-time paints and,
Right.
love us. They wanted something like that.
Oh my God. Who else is on? Is there anybody else? Or who else is on this label? Because isn't it?
Deaf American?
Yeah, isn't it relatively
Slayer.
new? Okay.
He's going to switch over us, a band, Wolfsbane from England, Masters of Reality, and a few other bands that I don't know if he's recorded yet or not, but I don't know if they're signed either, so I don't know if I should say their name.
Is there anything we didn't ask you that you want to be asked?
I don't know. I don't remember that far back.
Do you think you might ever release Return of the Fly?
Yeah, that's going to come out on a British CD for Legacy.
I like that song. Do you have anything else? Oh, I know one other thing I was curious about. Some people, when you play them the record, I was curious, like, how you, like, would you refute that, or like, they hear a lot more Doors influence than like the previous record. Definitely some people, not like, not let's say us, but like, you play it to somebody who's never heard you before in your bands, they would say, oh, it sounds kind of like the Doors. Does that like, does that have any basis, or?
I don't know if it has that much basis. Well, in Spin, they thought it sounded like Elvis.
Well, it does. You always sound like Elvis.
Yeah.
Well, so that's what I mean. It's like my three favorite singers are like Jim Morrison, Elvis Presley mainly, and then the guy from the Righteous Brothers, Bill Medley. Yeah, great singer.
Yeah.
And so any of those references, I mean, because I always thought that Jim Morrison ripped off Elvis left and right. Because all of a sudden it's just like Elvis, and there's nobody like that, and then all of a sudden there's this guy, Jim Morrison, and he's got a basic voice like Elvis. Well, it's more like smooth and full, as opposed to all those like pop voices which just kind of carry a song. They ride in that range that's memorable or whatever. And then same with Bill Medley, So I don't think Bill Medley really sounds like Elvis that much though, but I think that Jim Morrison really sounds like him a lot. The difference is that Jim Morrison is saying words that mean a little more than what Elvis says, a different song. But then there's also this other connection where Elvis would always do Righteous Brothers songs in his Vegas set. So there's kind of a connection there, and a triad. And those are my favorite singers. So if anyone makes a connection there, that's fine.
I think it might be because there's not many people in rock
that can sing.
Yeah.
No, it's true.
Who sing with a low voice and yet sing very like powerfully and melodically at the same time. Not that many people.
Well, because every heavy metal band, don't forget, their main influence is Dio. Or Ethel Merman. That's like Ethel Merman. It sounds like Ethel Merman. It's so funny. Me and Erie just sit in the car and do, no, then do any metal song after that.
Really?
Same fucking thing.
Really?
I hate it.
Although now the big catchphrase, we make fun of this all the time when we interview these guys, and they all say, we're really like getting into a bluesier thing, and they're about as bluesy as
I hate people
get
that
the hell out of here.
jump on the blues bandwagon because it's just like really I don't know. I wanted to get them to stop that anyway, but have somebody else do it. It's just like, is it okay?
You don't like Dave.
I think I met him.
Unless he's changed.
Thick glasses.
Yeah, well,
Ray-Bans.
yeah, that's exactly. That's exactly.
Yeah. Anyway, he goes, you can ask a stupid question. Just roll his tone.
No, not David.
Well, I don't know.
Questions.
Look, all right.
Thank you so much.
Thanks
It
a
was
lot.
nice to meet you.
It was great.
Like, you'll all let us know where he's at and stuff, right, when he's playing?
Oh, yeah. Anytime you guys want to come down, just
Yeah.
this is great.
All right, good. Okay, Glenn.
Thanks.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.